Welcome to the Volunteer and Combination Officer section weekly webinar series. We actually are doing two webinars this week and a special week. Today, our topic is mental fitness training for life. I'm John Buckman. I am the moderator for the event, and we're looking forward to an exciting presentation for you today. As usual, audio is being broadcast over voice over IP technology. If your computer should freeze up or stop working, log out, log right back in, and more than likely, you will be right back into the program. You won't miss much. The audience, your microphones have all been muted, but we do monitor the chat and the question answer section of this webinar. So if you look at your upper right hand corner, you'll find the chat and question answer menus. We encourage you to share your comments and submit questions for the speakers. And I'd like to know who's on and where you're from. The other day we had a attendee from Saudi Arabia. We usually have an attendee, Nuno, from Peru. So looking forward to hopefully they'll be with us today. So let's get started here. The Volunteer and Combination Officer section does lots of things. Changed a couple slides if you've been with us before. Just this little more highlight, a little bigger words. But our big show is Symposium in the Sun. Every November, usually the second week in November, then we will have the Symposium in the Sun where 600 of our best friends show up. And we invite you to work on getting there in the near future here. We have legislation that we monitor. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Ribbon reports. We have a great relationship with the National Volunteer Fire Council, and we're looking at some additional education programs that we do other than just the webinar on critical thinking and developing a Chiefs Academy. This would be a virtual Chiefs Academy, be about 12 months and doing it virtually. And so we're looking at developing that, hopefully to have that out around the 1st of 2025. So we do have our friend Taser from Saudi Arabia who's logged in. What are some of our upcoming webinars? Next week, we're going to be doing critical thinking, a key to officer success, a new program the VCOS has out there. We'll be doing advanced volunteer leadership training and then two other topics later in the month. We encourage you to show up for those and register ahead of time is always great. So upcoming events, the Hazmat conference is next week, June 5th through the 9th. If you haven't registered for that, still time to get to that. The big Fire Rescue International show is the big show for the International Association of Fire Chiefs, which is our mother organization. And then I've already mentioned Symposium in the Sun. So this is Howard Cohen, but let me just tell you a little bit about, what some of the things that Howard has done is just a tremendous, and he's going to talk to you about that stuff. But you know what Howard said was firefighting is one of the best jobs around. That really wasn't rocket scientist things, but it's so true. All of us know it's the best job around, but it is also one of the most dangerous, as Howard explained it. We don't take care of ourselves. We train and prepare for the events, for the big one, to mitigate those hazardous events, but we don't take care of ourselves. And what Howard's going to talk about today is how to get prepared and sustain that preparedness over a long period of time, because we know the risk to our physical, emotional, and our spiritual health. And with that, Howard, I will turn it over to you and break a leg.
Thanks, Chief Buckman. Thrilled to be here, and thrilled to have all of you out there in the audience logging in and paying attention, listening to this presentation. Just a little bit about about who I am and where I'm coming from. So I was a volunteer firefighter for 20 years. I actually entered the fire service when the department in my town asked me if I would be their chaplain, which I agreed to do. I said as long as I could get trained as a firefighter, and they said sure. They actually snickered and laughed and said sure. But I retired 20 years later as the deputy chief of the department. Really came to love the fire service, and if I had found it when I was younger, and who knows, that might have been my first career. In the meanwhile, so about my first career, by the way, was I am a semi-retired rabbi. In the meantime, after I left the volunteer fire service, I got very involved with Africa Fire Mission. I've traveled to Kenya 4 times to be part of the symposium that we co-run with the EMS system in Nairobi. And we have an online class similar to this kind of webinar that we offered to firefighters primarily in Eastern Africa, but they come from further afield as well. And we do that every week. I'm the coordinator for that and sometimes presenter. In addition, in my post-active firefighting days, I become involved with crisis incident stress management. I'm a crisis incident facilitator in the state of Vermont and president of the Green Mountain Crisis Incident Stress Management Team. And like I said, I'm a rabbi. I've been a rabbi for a little over 30 years. And I'm also a magician, although I do it purely for recreational purposes. It's something I learned with my dad many years ago, over 50 years ago, and I still have some fun doing it. It's a lot of fun. I have 3 adult children and 2 grandkids, and you are some of the first people to learn that I have a 3rd grandchild on the way. And I have 1 wife. We've been married for a long time. So click to my next slide here. So today, I'm going to introduce you to something called mental fitness. I'm pretty sure it's not what you think it is. So mental fitness is essentially a way to build up or train your brain, which is a big muscle, to work for you and to help you achieve more happiness and satisfaction in life. It also helps you to be a more effective and all-around better leader, and quite frankly, a much more pleasant person to be around in general. Yes, I know this probably seems like a tall order, but here's the thing. It's much easier than you think, providing, of course, like any kind of fitness program, you're willing to commit to it. So think about when you took a fire instructor course, if you've taken one of those. You learned that a good fire training or drill follows a particular progression. What is the drill we're going to do? Why are we going to learn this drill? When do we need to apply this drill? And lastly, it's the how do we do the drill. So we don't really get to the hands-on how to develop the muscle memories until we actually had the drill explained to us. We learn why it's an important drill, and we learn when we're going to use it, and then we learn how to do it. So we always have to ask ourselves, what skills does a leader need? Why does a leader need these skills? And when does a leader need these skills? And lastly, and this is the point that I'm going to spend most of my time talking about, how does a leader acquire these skills? So, like you, I've read a great many articles and books on leadership, as I suspect many of you have also done. Most of these articles are actually really good. The authors have done a great job of describing the skills a good leader needs and why those skills are needed. But virtually no one actually teaches you or offers you a training program for how to develop leadership skills. So my objective today is to introduce you to a training model for developing leadership skills. This program is built on a coaching philosophy called positive intelligence. Positive intelligence is an operating system with many applications. In particular, for today's purposes, my focus will be on its application to leadership. So positive intelligence grew out of research into leadership books, studies, cognitive behavioral psychology, performance science, human development studies, and most excitingly, cutting-edge neuroscience, namely brain mapping. The foundation of positive intelligence is something called factor analysis. Factor analysis is the attempt to discover the fewest number of independent factors that together account for a huge number of variations in outcome. For example, there are thousands of colors in nature, but if you do factor analysis on them, you'll discover that there are really only 3 color factors, the primary colors: red, green, and blue. These three factors or colors can be recombined to result in thousands of outcome variations. That realization enables massive simplification. As an artist, all you need is a palette of three colors, not hundreds, to paint a multi-hued picture. Similarly, there are 1,000 ways that we humans sabotage our own happiness, cause ourselves stress, derail our performances, and fall short of our true potential. When researchers did factor analysis on the negative root level dynamics of the mind, what they discovered was that there were only 10 factors responsible for this kind of self-sabotage. I'm going to call these 10 factors saboteurs because they sabotage our happiness, and saboteurs is the name that positive intelligence gives them also. On the other hand, there are tons of emotional intelligence and leadership competencies and other personality characteristics associated with success and happiness. But research revealed that there are only 5 root level positive factors. That's it, only 5. We'll call these the 5 sage powers. They are empathy, explore, innovate, navigate, and activate. Discovering these root level factors of performance and well-being dramatically simplifies personal and professional development. Learning how to manage these 10 negative response factors and engage the 5 sage powers is the heart of mental fitness, which I will explain in much more detail a bit further on, is the how of consciously developing, of how we consciously develop our leadership skills. Now, I realize that this might sound kind of heady right now, and you might be wondering what this has to do with the fire service. And the pieces will start to fall together as I start to disassemble all the talk and rebuild it into this operating system. So look, our brain is essentially just a muscle. And like every other muscle in our body, if we exercise it, it will respond. We can develop it. We can develop the strength of our brain. We can develop its flexibility and mass if we want to. And to do so, we need to just work it out regularly. All right, you don't take the brain to the gym and do, lift your dumbbells. And we don't make our brain bulkier because it's got to fit inside our skull. But what we are actually doing is slowly rewiring it at the root level. In particular, we are rewiring it to default to the part of our brain where attributes like creativity, empathy, resilience, inspiration, and curiosity originate. Because of evolutionary reasons, however, our brain comes essentially pre-wired with a bias for the part of the brain where survival attributes originate. As important as these survival attributes are in life and death situations, in everyday life, unchecked, they become a hindrance to our well-being. This will all make more sense or become clear as I proceed through the this presentation. So in effect, we have 2 brains. Well, technically, we only have one brain, but because the 2 halves are where very different human impulses originate, we often refer to them as the right brain and the left brain. However, to better help you understand the role these 2 brains play, let's call the right brain the thrive, love brain, and the left brain, the fear, survive brain. The survive region is where negative emotions are generated. Effectively, these saboteurs, which I will say more about in a few minutes, are like the voices in our head that tell us all sorts of lies that contribute to our unhappiness and ineffectiveness. More importantly, from the perspective of leadership, these saboteurs undermine our best efforts to perform all the stuff we keep being told leaders are supposed to do. For example, we read and are told that a good leader is a good communicator. Well, in order to be a good communicator, you have to not be defensive. In order to not be defensive, you have to be willing to take feedback. You have to be willing to receive criticism. You have to be willing to risk being vulnerable. We're told good leaders need to be empathetic. How do you become empathetic? The left brain, the fear side, the fear survive side of the brain, doesn't cultivate empathy in us. So this is why we need to understand where these different emotions come from in the different parts of our brain. Let's see, did I do this slider? Lost my place. Oh, lost track. Here we go. So let's talk about the fear survive brain, or sometimes known as the left brain. So you have a whole series of things like judgment, being hyper vigilant of your. These are different saboteurs. An avoider saboteur. We get impatient. We worry. Basically, any unpleasant emotions originate in this left brain area. These saboteurs originate in the brain stem and the limbic system and parts of the other parts of the left brain. These saboteurs are what produce much of our stress and anxiety, self-doubt, anger, shame, guilt, frustration, and mind chatter. It is important to point out that at one time in the evolution of humans, all of these sort of saboteurs, these negative qualities, were essential to our survival. For example, our ancestors needed to be hypervigilant for danger because survival depended on them being able to escape being eaten. In fact, one way or another, each of the 10 saboteurs, which I will explain in a little bit, were important to our survival. Today, they're still important, but generally only for a short time. Behavioral and psychological researchers point out that staying with these negative emotions for more than a handful of seconds hurts our ability to think and see and act clearly. It is also unhealthy for us because the stress caused from these negative emotions produces cortisol, which can put us at higher risk of many health problems, including anxiety, depression, digestive problems, headaches, muscle tension and pain, heart disease, heart attack, high blood pressure, strokes, sleep problems, weight gain, problems with memory and focus. And let's not leave out, being stressed out just makes us unpleasant to be around and also makes us ineffective leaders. Now, if a lot of those things that I just described are various health conditions that first responders and in particular firefighters suffer with because the work is stressful and it produces this cortisol. And as we know, medical reasons are one of the leading causes of death of firefighters. So we have all this stuff going on, and our work really requires us to be fairly hypervigilant. And so we need to learn how to manage that in order to be more effective all around. So think about when you are the incident commander at a big event. It doesn't have to be too big, but you're the person in charge. You are very focused. You are rapidly processing new information, making judgment calls. And with all this primary concern, and all you're really thinking about it, like, I got to take care of this fire, but I got to worry about my firefighters, worry about the civilians that are around there. You got a lot on your mind. So when you're on the fire ground, you're going to be hypervigilant because you're paying attention to a lot of different factors. You want to be hypervigilant. You want to be making judgment calls. And you worry. But here's the thing. You don't want to be living every moment of your life with that same kind of stress. For example, you don't want to be a hypervigilant person all the time. If you did, you would effectively be paranoid, and living in constant fear. To be sure, I want my chief on the fire ground to be super vigilant when I'm out there, but I don't want my chief to be hyper vigilant at every waking moment of her life. It's not going to be healthy. So let's take a look at the right thrive brain. This is part of the brain where things like love, learning and exploring, curiosity, empathy, or love of self and others, innovation, love of creating problems, love of creating and problem solving, laser focus, love of purpose, meaningfulness, love doing things. This is where all these kinds of emotions generate from. The other brain, as I say, called the right brain, is where positive emotions are generated. The thrive brain consists of the middle prefrontal cortex and other parts of the so-called right brain, whereas the survive brain is wired for hyper alertness for danger. The thrive brain is wired for creativity and big picture awareness of what is important. What's really cool is that we can do brain mapping and see what parts of the brain light up when we're engaged with different kinds of activities, which is truly how we know that what part of the brain these emotions and qualities come from. It's not speculation. It's not someone's theory. It's that we can really see this stuff going on. The other thing that's really cool about activating the right brain is that it releases endorphins, which are the body's natural pain relievers and mood boosters. In other words, they counter the negative impacts of stress-induced cortisol, or makes you feel better. So here's how it works. The key term is something called neuroplasticity, which is basically a fancy word for saying we can reshape our brain. We have the ability to change how our brain works. In fact, the brain is pretty malleable. It's just like anything we could shape through exercise. So here's how it works. And this is an oversimplification, granted, but for our purposes, it serves the purpose to explain it this way. So the brain is made up of neurons. Neurons are nerve cells that send messages all over your body to allow you to do everything from breathing, talking, eating, walking, thinking, whatever, everything. When a signal travels down a neuron, it results in activation of other neurons based on the synapses that connect the neurons. So this is what we're talking about. What happens is that there's multiple choices for which directions the signal can travel. So imagine there's a signal coming down through this process because an event took place. You slam your finger with a hammer, and so it's sending messages up here. The question is which neurons will be activated. Every time a neuron activates another neuron, they become more closely wired together, making it more likely that the signal will go in that direction the next time around. This is known as creating a neural pathway. So you have an event, it follows along here, and it goes, and it has a choice at some point which direction it's going to go. And the more often the neuron follows to the left brain, you're going to develop a neural pathway in that direction. If we want to send things, if we want to be developing the neural pathways to go to the thrive or right brain, we can do that through a conscious process that truly reroutes the brain, rewires the brain so that the neural pathway goes to the right side. So it doesn't matter what skill you want to master. The key to mastering it is repetition. The problem with so many of our leadership training programs is that it dumps us full of what the skills of leadership are, but it doesn't teach us how to practice these skills. Have you ever gone to a leadership workshop where you spent time developing or practicing skills for empathy, for communication, for effective problem solving? Typically, we don't spend much time doing that. And by the way, when I mean problem solving, I don't mean reading a fire scenario, a fireground scene, and then decide how I respond to this. I mean problem solving with your fellow firefighters or first responders when conflicts emerge between one person and another. That kind of problem solving. So we leave workshops and trainings excited about what we were just taught, but our inspiration and ability to put these new skills to work rapidly diminishes because we don't learn how to practice them in order to master them. We would never expect a firefighter to practice their skills while on the fire ground. That's why we have drills. Same is true with leadership skills. I might be told I should be empathetic, but if I don't practice or drill on how to be empathetic, it means I have to figure it out in real time when I most likely already need to be empathetic and not figuring out how to do it. So let's get into the how of building new neural pathways. So just to really hammer home the point, repetition is the key to mastery. Like any skill, like any drill, you have to practice it over and over, and you have to practice it in different scenarios, just like we do with our fire drills. You got to practice them in under all kinds of situations. So here's how we start to train to develop new neural pathways. This is how we train our brain muscle. So effectively, within this, I don't know, muscles are much more complicated. They're not just one thing, one muscle. Your bicep is made up of multiple different parts. I'm not going to go into the anatomy of things. So when I talk about these other muscles, they're all part of the brain muscle. So not to make things confusing. So there's 3 muscles you're going to have to learn how to master. That's all. 3 muscles. First one's called the saboteur interceptor muscle. Basically, this is what the saboteur interceptor muscle does. Whenever you start to feel a negative emotion, these are your saboteurs telling you lies, which I'm going to explain more for you in a bit. The first task set is to learn how to intercept these saboteurs and to stop listening to the lies they're telling you. Second muscle is called the self-command muscle. This muscle helps us to improve our ability to command our mind to quiet the saboteur region and amplify what I'm going to call the sage region, or the sage muscle. By using simple exercises, some of which I'll explain a little bit later on, you can learn how to run your brain rather than allow your saboteur hijacked brain to run you. And then the sage muscle is how you start to look at the world differently. The sage muscle gets us to start looking for the gift and opportunity that whatever the situation is we're facing is offering us. I'll explain that a little bit more too down the road. So let's spend a little bit of time on the saboteur interceptor muscle. The interceptor muscle can be compared to what your brain does, how your brain functions when you grab like the handle of a hot skillet. You grab the hot skillet, and what you're going to do, if you're like 99% of the people, is that you're going to let go because you're going to go, ow, that hurts. Simple. Saboteur interceptor muscle does the same thing when you experience emotional, psychological pain, the kind of thing. By pain, I'm going to put that in like scare quotes. The pain is an unpleasant feeling. Essentially, any unpleasant feeling is your saboteur. Your saboteur gets activated and starts to tell you lies. So one of your excuse me. So when one of your saboteurs is acting up, you'll experience some sort of negative emotion. The key is to acknowledge this, that it's happening, and which I will explain more about in a little bit. But it's like, instead of what we tend to do is, I'm okay, don't, no, I'm not bothered, no, it's everything's fine. When really what we're doing is burying whatever it is that's negative that we're experiencing, or pretending to not be bothered until we can't handle it anymore. So once you start to feel that unpleasant emotion, whatever it is, that's you want to intercept that with the saboteur intercept muscle. Now, the self-command muscle involves performing actually a 10-second little activity. In positive intelligence, we call these PQ reps. But don't get hung up on the name for that. The PQ is for positive intelligence, the positive intelligence quotient. But don't get hung up on the name. Basically, the self-command muscle is having you do is a 10-second little mini meditation session. It could come in the form of simple timeout, or something that everybody's taught to do, which is take a deep breath, things like that. But what happens is that when you do this, you activate the region, your sage region of your brain. So every time you can intercept your saboteurs and do a few of these 10-second mini meditation sessions, PQ reps, what will happen is that it'll stimulate the your thrive side of your brain. You start to begin the process of stimulating that side. The statement you want to say to yourself that tells you that you're shifting away from being sabotaged is this: no matter the situation, look for the gift and opportunity it offers you. This is a pivot point. You're pivoting between these saboteurs taking over your life and you getting into a place where you're going to be creative and curious, perhaps empathetic, in order to address whatever challenge is facing you. In fact, no matter how horrible or painful a situation might be in the moment, in time and with effort, it is very likely to give you the opportunity to learn something, or to be inspired to do something, or to help you acquire a new sense of power, of your own power, to do some pretty amazing things. I can give you a long list of 4 examples of what I'm talking about. I'm going to tell you about one I just learned about. I was visiting a rehabilitation center for children up through teenage to like 18 years old, actually, and then on into adulthood with job training, who had all kinds of disabilities, and whether they're developmental disabilities or physical disabilities from birth or from accidents. And one of their big funders is a woman named Joni Erickson. Johnny Erickson is her name. Johnny is a woman. Some of you might know her. I think she has a radio program, a movie was made about her. She dived into a swimming pool, broke her neck, became paralyzed. So what did she do? In time, she has developed and become a real inspiration for other people. She's fundraises. She generates. She's become an important donor and a motivational speaker. I think she's also a minister in some sort. So she took her accident, which, and she didn't drown in self-pity, but she looked at the situation and she dug deep into it, and she found something powerful to do as a result of it. Did she want to have the accident? No, but she used it as a way to she turned it into something incredibly powerful. Mothers Against Drunk Driving started the same way. The So many different kinds of programs that started that way, where something really terrible happens to someone, and the people, either to the family of the people who have it happen to, turn it into something much more powerful. So I'm going to show a short video that kind of describes this philosophy. So hopefully our we'll be able to make this video come on. It's just a 2 or 3 minute more long video.
His horse in the field to help him with the work. He loved his horse very much. One day, his horse ran away. All the villagers
I
came
can't
by
tell if
and
it's
said,
playing
"We are so sorry to
on my
hear this.
screen.
This is such bad luck." But the farmer responded, "Bad luck
It
or
is
good
playing,
luck?
Howard.
Who
It
knows?"
is.
Okay.
The villagers were confused but decided to ignore him. A few weeks went by, and then one afternoon, while the farmer was working outside, he looked up and he saw his horse running towards him. But the horse was not alone. The horse had returned back with a whole herd of horses. So now the farmer had 10 horses to help him in his field work. All the villagers came by to congratulate the farmer and said, "Wow, this is such good luck." But the farmer responded, "Good luck or bad luck? Who knows?" A few weeks later, the farmer's son came to visit and help his father on the farm. While trying to tame one of the horses, the farmer's son fell and broke his leg. The villagers came by to show sympathy and said, "How awful, this is such bad luck." Just as he did the first time, the farmer responded, "Good luck or bad luck, who knows?" A month later, the farmer's son was still recovering. He wasn't able to walk or do any manual labor to help his father around the field. During this time, a war had broken out. A regiment of the army came marching through the town, recruiting every able-bodied young man to join them. When the regiment came to the farmer's house and saw the young man's broken leg, they marched past and left him where he lay. Once again, all the villagers came by and said, "Amazing! This is such good luck! You're so fortunate!" Friends, I'm sure you know the farmer's reply to them. Good luck or bad luck? Who knows? We do not know everything. Sometimes when we let go of being right about what we think we know, we can end our suffering.
It's done, Howard.
Okay, thank you. All right. So the point of this video is that what looks to us like what could be good news isn't always good news, and what looks like what could be a bad news situation might not be so bad. As you can tell, the video seems to suggest that every misfortune comes with a silver lining, or as we might put it, a blessing in disguise. When you train yourself to respond to every situation, no matter how bad it seems, with that kind of question, the question of what is the gift and opportunity it can offer me, you begin to shift your brain into this sage perspective, which allows us to be more creative. So that's the sage muscle. No matter the situation, look for the gift and opportunity it offers you. And it's going to offer you excuse me, three gifts. No matter what the situation is, can it give you new knowledge? Can it give you power? And can it inspire you? That's what any and every situation offers us, no matter how horrible it might seem in the moment. That's the sage muscle. A little bit more about the sage perspective, sage muscle, knowledge. What have we learned from the bad situation? Well, we do that in the fire service after every incident, right? We do some, after incident review. We want to learn. If things went well, we want to learn from it. Things went badly, we want to learn from it. Power and appreciation for our resilience and our strength. Inspiration, creative response that wouldn't have occurred without experiencing this specific challenging circumstance. Who hasn't had that happen to them? All right, so now I'm going to take a shallow dive into the 10 saboteurs. This is where we kind of get into the meat of what I'm talking about. It probably seemed a little bit esoteric up to now. Okay. So the first saboteur that we all live with. We never get rid of the saboteurs. They're always there. To the degree to which they rule our lives is what mental fitness is all about. But the number one saboteur, the king of saboteurs, is the judge. I said there's 10 saboteurs. We may not all have all 10, but we all suffer from the judge. There's 3 modes of the judge. We judge ourselves, we judge others, and we judge circumstances. All of us do this to one degree or the other. The judge tells us lies about ourselves. It might say, I'm not good enough. I haven't, people don't like me. I haven't learned enough. I'm not big enough. I'm not strong enough. Constantly judging ourselves in a negative way. And the judge also tells us lies about others. They're stupid. They're not competent. They're not motivated. We're judging them all in those kinds of terms. And the third way that the judge shows up is judge of circumstances. Judge of circumstances mean something like, if only I could get to the next rank, then everything will be better for me. If only I could find a boyfriend or girlfriend, my life would be better. If only I didn't have an officer above me that I think is a jerk. Always judging circumstances. That's what the judge does. And the judge is always there for us. We just need to learn how to intercept it and not let the judge tell us these lies. So I'm going to run through the other judges now, the other saboteurs. And what I want to reiterate, there are these only 10 saboteurs. There are only these 10 different kind of character qualities or characteristics. And you can find out which saboteurs are most dominant in your life in a self-assessment, which I'll tell you about later. So, controller. Controller is anxiety-based, needs to take charge, control situations, and control people's actions for their own benefit. They're impatient when they can't get things under control the way they want it to be. And the lie the controller tells us is that I'm the only one who could do this right. So I'm going to try and be the one who's in control. Hyperachiever. Dependent on constant performance and achievement for self-respect and self-validation. Latest achievement quickly discounted, needing more. The lie? Life is about achieving and producing. Feelings are distractions. The restless saboteur. Restless saboteur is constantly in search of greater excitement in the next activity they are constantly busy. Rarely is the restless saboteur at peace or content with the current activity. The lie, Life is too short. It must be lived fully. FOMO, fear of missing out. The stickler, perfectionism and a need for order and organization taken too far. Anxious, trying to make too many things perfect. The lie, this is up to me to deal with and fix. Perfectionism is good. There's a right way and a wrong way to do something, and I know how they're supposed to be done. Do any of these saboteurs start to sound familiar? Do you recognize these qualities in yourself or people that you work with or work around? The pleaser. Pleaser indirectly tries to gain acceptance and affection by helping, pleasing, rescuing, or flattering others. The pleaser loses sight of his or her own needs and becomes resentful as a result. The lie the pleaser tells himself is, I don't do this for myself. I help others and don't expect anything in return. It's all about what I do for everyone else. And then there's the hypervigilant. As I said, hypervigilance is good on the fire ground. Their continuous, intense anxiety about all the dangers and what could go wrong. Vigilance that can never rest. The lie of the hypervigilant is life is full of dangers. If I don't look out for them, who will? The next saboteur is called the avoider. The avoider focuses on the positive and pleasant in an extreme way. The avoider avoids difficult and unpleasant tasks and conflicts. The lie, you're a good person to spare other people's feelings. No good comes out of conflict. It is good to be flexible. It is good to be a peacemaker. All those are true to a degree because you know what it's like to be around people who avoid dealing with issues, avoid dealing with problems. It gets pretty frustrating for those who are waiting for the avoider to stop avoiding. And then there's the victim saboteur. The victim saboteur is emotional and temperamental as a way to gain attention and affection, an extreme focus on internal feelings, particularly painful ones. They have a martyr streak. The lie the victim saboteur says, if I play the victim, I at least get the attention I desire. Sadness is noble and shows depth and insight. Then we have hyper-rational. Hyper-rational saboteur is intense and has an exclusive focus on the rational processing of everything, including relationships. Can be perceived as uncaring, unfeeling, or intellectually arrogant. The lie, the rational mind is most important. Emotions get in the way of getting work done. I ask again, do any of these sound familiar? So the 10 saboteurs I just described originate on the left part of the brain in the brainstem and the limbic system, and the 5 sage powers, which I will go into next, originate or emanate from the right brain and the middle prefrontal cortex. You don't need to remember where in the brain these come from per se. This just shows you we know that this is what's happening. So it's the science behind some of this. Okay, so I've introduced you to these saboteurs, these 10 saboteurs, which again I will repeat. There's you can do a saboteur assessment test. I'll give you the link for that later, in which you answer a series of questions, and it'll help identify which are the dominant saboteurs in your life. And you'll probably, laugh when you realize I've been nailed, that this is who I am. So we intercept the saboteurs, right? And now we want to move into the sage power area. There's only 5. They are empathy, explore, innovate, navigate, and activate. Empathy is when you strive to understand yourself and others and the connection between the two of you. Empathy is unconditional love for the self or for others. Within empathy, there is no judgment. We often lack empathy for ourselves. Often we're hard on ourselves, way harder than we ever need to be. And we forget, who we are and to treat ourselves nicely. I want to take a second and talk about, because I said there's no judgment when you're in the realm of empathy, but I want to talk about something called discernment. Judgment is when you basically critique something. I'm judging you as not good enough, not strong enough, not smart enough, not fast enough, not clever enough. It's a judgment. Judgment is not healthy. The alternative to judgment is discernment, trying to understand what is keeping someone from being more effective, faster, smarter. What's going on? So people often think judgment is like, what's important? How am I going to evaluate someone? You don't need to do it through judgment. You discern what's going well and what's not, and focus differently as opposed to judge. Exploring is when you're curious in an unbiased way, which means you're like an anthropologist whose job is to just observe and be curious about what you're looking at. You wonder about what's going on without judging it. You just like, I'm really curious about what I'm seeing or what's going on. In the exploration power realm, you're fascinated and thrilled by what is revealed. The next stage power is the innovate power. Here's where you brainstorm. Here's where you get creative. Here's where you think outside the box. Here's where you imagine what can be, solutions without judging them. One of the things to do in this innovate state is to come up with as many ideas about how to do something as possible. There's a fun game that we sometimes play in the coaching realm around here where you just come up with an idea and to someone here's the idea and they say what I like about this part of your idea is X, and then you add to it something else, and you just keep adding creative additions to the idea until you keep it so that you can keep exploring ways to solve whatever problem you're facing. The fourth stage power is called navigate. And navigate is when you decide on a path, and you're looking for the path that most aligns with your internal values and mission in life. So that's like for a lot of first responders, whether you're a career firefighter or a volunteer, and you've chosen this path, it aligns, it gives you meaning and purpose and mission, and you embrace it, and you are excited about being part of it. That's what navigate is. And the fifth power is moving into pure action. It's where you bring all your mental and emotional energies together, and you're laser focused on your objectives. I know that whether you're a career or a volunteer or whatever level of paid firefighter, we all have in our departments folks who are really motivated and they're really focused on developing their skills and training, and you can see it. They've got the navigate power is in full gear. They want to do their firefighting as well as they can, and they're really focused on it. And then we see others who are they're not that way, and they're not all that clear-minded and focused on pursuing their goals. Maybe their saboteurs are kicking in. So those are the 5 sage powers. That's all there are. Not very many. They don't go in order. This is not a like, first empathy, then explore. Um, but empathy is sort of the bottom, is sort of kind of a baseline one, because if we can't express unconditional love for ourselves and for others, it's really hard to enter into relationships that are healthy with other folks. So I just wanted to throw this slide in here about something called the Pareto principle, which everybody knows is the 80-20 rule, namely 20% of the people do 80% of the work. Um, the funny thing about this this principle was actually an economics principle, and it was developed by an Italian in the 19th century. Um, the the rule applies to our retention of new material, though. Also, we now know that one-off training just isn't going to work. But you know that from a practical purpose when it comes to learning a new technical skill. You don't just, here, I'm going to teach you the skill and now you know it. You know you have to keep practicing it. It's also true in terms of the kinds of skills that make us good leaders, that make us more mentally fit and more resilient and better problem solvers. So listening to a lecture on leadership is not going to make you a better leader. Me telling you what a good leader needs to be empathetic does not train you how to be empathetic. Me telling you how a good leader needs to know how to handle conflict does not train you how to handle conflict. I am sure every one of you can check off all the skills a good leader is expected to have. I can also all but guarantee that none of you have been drilled on these skills or even know how to train on them. That's the Pareto principle in action. A corollary to the 80-20 rule is that change, in other words, skill development, is 20% insight and 80% muscle development. In short, if you want to develop leadership skills, you have to develop the necessary muscles. This is what I'm calling mental fitness. So you could see how this all goes back to developing the neural pathways in the brain. That's the mental fitness part. So that's how we actually start to develop the skills of leadership skills that we want to have. So, like I said, positive change is 20% insight and 80% muscle. So I'm going to talk to you about mental strength and fitness, a mental fitness strength training program. It's really simple. It only requires about 15 minutes a day of commitment on your part. This is it. The mental fitness program, workout program. You practice doing PQ reps for 10 seconds of focused attention on a physical sensation. 1 minute equals 6 reps. 5 minutes equals 30 reps. 10 minutes equals 50 reps. Your daily goal is 100 reps, which brings you up to about 15 minutes. Your positive intelligence quotient, or your mental fitness, is the percentage of the time that your brain is working positively versus negatively for you. I'm not going to explain this in much here in this detail in this presentation, but the main takeaway is that your positive intelligence quotient is the percentage of the time your brain is working for you. And if you stop and think about it, I imagine most of you would agree that there are just sometimes we get in our own way. And that's our saboteurs negative working against us. So here are some PQ drills. You take your 2 fingers like this, and you gently rub your fingertips together for 10 seconds. I know, I'm sure you're thinking, yeah, right, this is crazy what he's telling me to do. As you're doing it, you're paying attention to what's happening, And that's building those that saboteur intercept muscles, right? So you're doing that, and then it's helping you develop the self-command muscle because you're paying attention to it. You might rub your fingertips all together like this. You're feeling the physical sensation. The physical sensation is a necessary part of this process. It's not all mental. You could rub your hands on your pants or on some surface that's near you. What you're doing is you're making yourself, you're consciously making yourself pay attention to something. You're developing the muscles that you will use when you encounter the saboteurs or the stressors in your life. You pay attention to sounds. You sit quietly with your eyes closed and you listen to sounds that are the closest sound to you that you could hear, which is probably going to be your breathing. And then you try and listen to sounds as far away as possible. You pay attention to the air temperature when you inhale and when you exhale, or focus intensely on an object for just a short period of time. Every time you do that, you're developing your saboteur intercept muscle and then also your self-command muscle, which enables you then move into the sage powers. I know you're probably thinking to yourself, yeah, this sounds crazy. It sounds super easy. It sounds ridiculous. How is this going to make me get stronger? You practice it 15 minutes a day over a period of time, and slowly but surely, it helps you get to where to have that mental fitness and strength to address the challenges that you meet. Now, that doesn't mean all your problems go away. Don't get me wrong. We still get sabotaged by our saboteurs at times, but what we're doing is we're getting stronger and better at bringing the skills that leaders need into play, into action. There's so many different ways you can get your PQ reps in. Daily routines, for example, pay really close attention while you're brushing your teeth. Every time you check your email, for example, remind yourself to take 3 breaths. When you're exercising, pay real close attention to your breathing. When you're eating, pay real attention to your chewing. You know, we eat, we don't pay attention. We put food in our mouth, blah, 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 and then we swallow it. Slow yourself down, paying attention to it. It's what you're doing is you're developing the saboteur intercept muscle and the self-command muscles. There's all kinds of different ways to do this. Now, let me just make a plug. It helps to have a coach to help you learn how to do these things, so you're not just doing it on your own. I'm going to skip through these. There's a number of exercises, but I think for time purposes, I want to get into the area of talking about leadership. I do want to talk about this one particular exercise, though. It's building the empathy exercise. Empathy is critical. Empathy is critical as a leader to win the trust of the people who you are leading. I mean, you can always be a leader who forces things down people's throat, but that's not really a leader. We'll talk more about some leadership aspirations, but this is a really simple thing. It's called the magic 5-to-1 ratio exercise. Find something positive to say to someone 5 times in a day. These could be simple things like good job, good morning, how are your kids? A smile, catching someone's eye and giving them a smile, or an affirming pat on the back. You want to build an empathetic relationship with someone. This is a great way to do it. Okay, I got to get into leadership here now. Okay, and what I'm hoping to do with this entire presentation is to excite you to want to learn more about positive intelligence as a way to make yourself a more effective leader. And as we know, you don't have to have a title to be a leader. The new firefighter in the firehouse has as much an opportunity and potential to be a leader from his position as the chief or the battalion chief or the captain. Your title is not it does not make you a leader. It's how you interact with one another. So I want to describe the 4 steps of leadership. And I'll walk you through these things. Now, immediately, in order to really, to start to develop an ability with these areas, you need to practice them. So, step number 1 is what we call triple purpose. Triple purpose is this. As a leader, you need to be aware that there are 3 kinds of purposes that require attention. These are: does the purpose have a positive impact on the self? Does the purpose have a positive impact on each other? Does it have a positive impact on the others, our clients, for example, community members, and so forth? So, as a leader, what you're hoping to do as a leader is be able to have a positive impact on yourself. I feel good about what I'm doing. It's meaningful to me. I feel successful. And you want to have a positive impact on the people you work with. I want the folks that work with me to feel like what they're doing matters to one another, that they're there for each other. And finally, you want to feel like what you're doing is important to the community or to the world that you're trying to serve. So step number 1, as a leader, you need to focus on having this triple purpose in mind. Earned trust. Earned trust comes from the courage to be vulnerable. Authority-based leadership doesn't inspire. Quality leadership is about influence. To be successful as a leader, you have to explore different ways that you can influence your team members to aspire to become better and better. To truly be able to influence people, they have to trust you. To build trust, you have to be willing to be vulnerable and empathize with others. Building trust requires you to be in touch with the empathy sage power. Building trust requires you to be willing to truly listen to others without judgment. Remember, the number 1 saboteur is the judge. If I could see a show of hands, I would ask you to raise your hand if you don't like conflict. I don't know anybody who says, I like conflict. But the truth is, conflict is inevitable. If you interact with other people, you will have conflict. In fact, we often are conflicted within ourselves. So there's conflict. It's just there. The thing is that what we want to have is healthy conflict. Conflict and life go hand in hand. Without conflict, there won't be growth. Conflict. In order to have healthy conflict, steps 1 and 2 are prerequisites. There has to be a purpose to the conflict. There has to be mutual trust between the parties in the conflict. I was in a kind of a conversation this evening with someone that started to feel like a conflict. And I found myself thinking, there's no purpose in this conversation that we're having, this conflict. And so I wasn't invested in pursuing it. So I just wanted to step out of it and say, okay, I'm good with what you're saying. I mean, that, and because I just wanted to be out of it because there was no purpose to it. I'm not sure I really trusted the person I was having the interaction with. So there has to be purpose to the conflict. It has to speak to one of those three purposes, and there has to be mutual trust between the parties in the conflict. So to be a successful leader, you have to build trust and explore, which takes risks, different ways to influence your team members to aspire to become better and better. Let me repeat myself here. Empathy is critical to building trust. Empathy is critical to being able to have healthy conflict. Look at this graphic and all the words that form this heart. Those are all the kinds of skills every leadership workshop tells us we need to develop, and that these are the skills essential to trust building. So how do we develop these leadership skills? It is by understanding our saboteurs and strengthening the intercept, self-command, and SAGE muscles. I want to say a few words about unhealthy conflict because we've all experienced them. They aren't fun, and they rarely end well. Unhealthy conflicts bring out the worst aspects of our preferred saboteurs. For example, if you have a strong avoider or pleaser saboteur, you are likely to stick your head in the sand and pretend the conflict or problem doesn't exist. Burying or ignoring a conflict problem doesn't make it go away. If you have a strong controller saboteur, you are likely to insist that there is only one right solution to a conflict or problem, and it's yours. Authority and control-based conflict resolution might work in the short term, but in the long term, it undermines trust and the three purposes. And this brings me to step number 4, mutual accountability. With mutual accountability, everybody has buy-in. Mutual accountability is not about punishing. I read a lot about how do you hold people accountable. And I know I've struggled with that myself with folks in my department. You know, they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So how do I hold them accountable? True mutual accountability is not about punishing. You got to go back to the triple purpose. Holding one another accountable in a healthy, empathetic way is truly a gift, a kind of gift giving. Mutual accountability means that each team member is not only responsible for their individual tasks and contributions, but also collectively accountable for the team's overall success in delivering its goals. Mutual accountability goes beyond individual responsibility. It fosters a culture of collaboration, transparency, and shared ownership within the team. Old-fashioned leadership is supposed to hold everyone accountable for conduct and results. I was in a department where the chief was the one who was all the problems were supposed to be dealt with by the chief. Problem is that this is super inefficient because the leader can't be everywhere all the time. Instead of a top-down system, all team members should be holding everyone accountable, because all have buy-in. I mean, we say this all the time in the fire service, right? We need to make sure the equipment is right when we leave our trucks for the next crew to come in because we're accountable to them. But it's not just about the mechanics. It's about the relationships we have. Mutual accountability is a gift we give to one another. Again, accountability is not about punishing, It's not about judging. It's not about criticizing. It's not anything negative. With triple purpose, positive impact on self, positive impact on each other, and positive impact on others, mutual accountability is a way of making sure we're gift giving to one another. I can't do this without holding others accountable and them holding me accountable. For the sake of you growing, I owe it to you to help you with mutual accountability. It's a gift because I care about you. To develop your leadership skills, you have to work out the right muscles. That's what it comes down to. So to enhance your mental fitness, Positive Intelligence prescribes a 3-step process. When you detect a saboteur situation, let go of the associated thoughts and emotions instead of pursuing them. This weakens the saboteurs. But let me add to this and say, when you start to feel an unpleasant feeling, something that you don't like, knots in your stomach, tensed up neck, feeling judged, feeling criticized, some negative feeling, you want to intercept the lies, the saboteurs that are getting activated. By the way, there's a lot I can say about how our saboteurs get activated. For example, if someone who's angry comes at me, their anger is going to activate my saboteurs because I want to defend myself from their negative saboteurs coming after me. So my response might be to activate my avoider saboteur or one of my hypervigilant saboteurs. So now both of our saboteurs are feeding off each other. We know this. This is a mirroring effect that science has demonstrated. I'll give you another example of how it works the other way, and I'm sure you've all had this experience. There's a member of your department, there's somebody in your family or in your community who, when they walk into the room, everybody lightens up. They just bring this positive energy with them. And truly, they are in their sage space. Their saboteurs are quiet. So they're not triggering any saboteurs in you. And it's a real phenomenon. Similarly, somebody walks in and they're in a cranky, pissed off mood. It activates our saboteurs. So first thing you want to do is learn how to detect the saboteurs are activated and then intercept them. Then you're going to perform the PQ reps to diminish their effectiveness and to begin to shift you into the SAGE perspective. And this is known as strengthening the self-command muscle. And finally, you're going to begin exploring the SAGE responses. And now you're operating in the Thrive left side of the brain, where you're being curious, you're being empathetic, you're searching in non-judgmental ways for solutions and to the challenges you're facing. So this is what I wanted to share with you all. I know it's kind of heady. It seems kind of heady, but what I'm hoping it will entice some of you to do is to explore more deeply the whole process of positive intelligence in your life. And if you go to this link here, you can take the Saboteur Assessment quiz. No charge, it's free. And if you're curious about it, you can, after you've done it, you can learn more by clicking on this site. But if you want to also be in touch with me directly to learn more about mental fitness training and this positive intelligence, you can get a hold of me through this email address or this phone number. You could text that number or call it or click on the website. And I appreciate you coming out. Backtrack one too many. I appreciate you coming out and giving me an hour and a half of your time to share this information with you. I'm 99% sure you have not been given information like this at other fire-related trainings. I mean, I never did in 20 years. Really improved with folks earlier at different stages. Again, this is just an introduction. This is like going to the gym to talk to the a coach at the gym who walks you through all the machines, say, here's this, you can do this, here's that, here's this, and now you got to decide whether you're going to do it. So on that note, Steve, I'm gonna shut up, and if there's any questions, I'll field them. If not, I'll thank everybody again for being out here tonight, and let them be on their way.
All right, Howard. Thank you very much. Wow, man, I tell you, you're right. This is not training that most of us get. So I've got a question here for you is, do you think psychology should be a part of Fire Officer 1 training?
Not psychology. I absolutely think that something like this positive intelligence training, so that people you can really kind of start to understand some of your core personality traits, for good and for bad. Look, I just want to say, all those saboteurs, they're good for us at certain times. So, but when they're not managed, then we're being governed by them. So I think anyone who's in a relationship role, whether you're an officer or in a marriage, could benefit from having a better understanding of themselves in this way. And also, this sets up the foundation for how do you actually master the skills that we're told leaders need. Like I said, communication, empathy, listening skills, all those sorts of things. In order to do those, we have to intercept the saboteurs that keep us from doing those. So, yeah, I think so, but not psychology. Psychology is because what happens when we take a psychology class without we go, oh, I have all these problems. I didn't know I had them.
Good. Well, Howard, I'm going to ask you to try to break this down, and I know it's probably not going to be a short answer, but how will this information about the brain and understanding how the brain functions? I remember using Maslow hierarchy of needs and figuring out which box you fit in. How will this information help our attendees, say, to resolve conflict in a company?
Yeah. So Maslow's hierarchy, totally different. That's totally different thing. That's not at all related to this in that respect. So what'll happen? How you can helps you resolve conflict is that you first of all, if you're striving for a healthy conflict, right, you have to have trust. The person you're in conflict with, you want to make so if you build the trust in advance. But okay, so I don't have that right. But if I don't have that right away. But if I'm in a conflict with someone, if I can empathize, try and understand more deeply where they're coming from. That's step number one. Step number two, if I go into a conflict with someone and instead of trying to prove that I'm right and they're wrong, I'm looking for the 10% of what they're presenting to me that I agree with. I'm searching for common ground that I can build on, because I want to look for creative solutions to our conflict. And I start with what I agree with them, what they're saying. And in any person I'm in the conflict, there's going to be some piece of it that I actually agree with what they're saying. So these are strategies to build on. But what I have to do first and foremost is make sure that my saboteurs don't take over. So somebody comes to me and they're critical. There's a conflict because they're not happy with how something's going. If I judge them and I get defensive right off the bat because I feel like I'm being threatened, now I'm in hypervigilant mode. I'm being threatened. I need to react. I'm not going to be open to listening to them. I'm not going to be empathetic with them. I'm not going to be open to look for solutions to our problem, creative solutions to our problem. I'm not going to be curious to what they have to say because I'm shutting down. So it does help in all those different areas. And the other thing where it helps the most, and another way, we slow us down. Anyone who's done anything in conflict management, anger management, right? We have to learn how to take breaths, slow down, give ourselves breaks, so that we're not reacting, but we're responding to situations. That's
All right.
Yeah.
Great, Howard. All right. So we've had got a good group of attendees hanging in here. We're about to wrap this up, but you do have homework. If you listen to Howard's presentation, you're supposed to be doing this mental fitness training 100 reps a day. You got to build up to that, just like any other building a muscle, building up your brain, and then the 4 steps of leadership that Howard gave closer to the end of the presentation. I hope that you can download this, or you took some screenshots of that stuff, and you start practicing those 4 leadership. Howard, I want to thank you very much for the information that you have provided to our people, to our attendees. It is important that as officers, as leaders, we learn how to manipulate, and that's a positive word, manipulate other people to do better for themselves, not just for us. But, many people say, oh, manipulate's a negative word. It's not. You want people to excel. And that's what this program, knowing this information, will help you to help others succeed. So, Howard, again, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your effort. And he did not say that he is actually on a mission in Jerusalem today. So he's there from Jerusalem. First time we've ever had a presenter present from out of the country. We do have a couple of attendees from out of the country, but never a presenter. So with that, you all this has been recorded. You will receive a link to today's recorded session. And please let us know about your experience by completing the survey. We want to know what you think. And if you have any ideas for future webinars, please share that as well. And with that, I'm going to say thank you. Appreciate everybody attending. Appreciate Howard for his effort. God bless each and every one of you. And stay safe out there.
Good night.